The bungalow stood at the end of Blackwood Lane, shrouded in an eerie silence. It was a relic of a bygone era, its paint now faded and peeling. Local legends whispered of a tragic past. Some spoke of a lingering darkness. The bungalow on Blackwood Lane was a place to be avoided. People claimed to see flickering lights in the dead of night, accompanied by faint, mournful cries. The bungalow remained abandoned, a testament to the horrors within, and it was about to welcome new residents, oblivious to the darkness that awaited them. The air hung heavy with unspoken dread as the Carter family arrived. John Carter, his wife Mary, and their teenage daughter Lily stepped out of their car, their breath catching in the stillness. Even in the fading light of the setting sun, the bungalow exuded an unsettling aura. "Well, this is it," John said, his voice unnaturally loud in the silence. "Our new home." But his words lacked conviction, his gaze lingering on the darkened windows of the house. Mary shivered, pulling her cardigan tighter around herself. "It's certainly something," she replied, her voice strained. Lily, usually brimming with teenage energy, stood silently beside her parents, her eyes wide with apprehension. The oppressive silence was broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind, a sound that seemed amplified in the eerie stillness. The air grew colder as shadows crept out from the woods, stretching like long fingers towards the house. As they approached the front door, a sense of foreboding washed over them, a feeling that they were crossing an invisible threshold into the unknown. The interior of the bungalow was shrouded in darkness, the musty air thick with the scent of decay. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced through the grime-covered windows. The air was heavy, as though the house itself was exhaling a lifetime of sorrow and regret. John flicked on the light switch, but nothing happened. "Power's out," he muttered, his voice echoing in the stillness. He found a flashlight and the beam flickered across the dusty furniture, revealing the outlines of covered shapes that hinted at the lives once lived within these walls. Lily wandered into the living room, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. "It's kind of creepy, don't you think?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the sound of her own breathing. Mary, her hand instinctively resting on Lily's shoulder, scanned the room. "It's just old, honey," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. But even as she spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following their every move. The shadows seemed to deepen, closing in on them like a suffocating blanket. As days turned into nights, the bungalow revealed itself slowly, reluctantly. Strange occurrences began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Footsteps creaked on the stairs when no one was around. Doors creaked open, seemingly of their own accord. A name, whispered on the wind, sent chills down their spines. "Anna," Lily breathed, her face pale as she stared at the wall across from her bed. The name, scrawled in what looked like dust on the peeling wallpaper, hadn't been there before. It was a whisper from the past, a chilling reminder that they were not alone. John dismissed it as an old house settling, but Mary couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. The whispers seemed to be getting louder, the shadows more defined. There was a presence in the house, she was sure of it, something unseen that was watching them, toying with them. One evening, as Mary was putting away groceries, she felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. She whirled around, her heart pounding, but there was no one there. The kitchen was empty, yet the air hung heavy with an unseen presence. It was then that the terror truly took root, the realization that they had invited something sinister into their home. Section 5. The Whispering Walls. The whispers began subtly, rustling sounds that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. In the quiet moments, when the house settled, they would hear it. A low murmur, like voices just beyond the realm of hearing. It was unsettling, like the house itself was trying to communicate. "Did you hear that?" Lily asked one evening, her eyes wide with fear. They were having dinner, or trying to, but the oppressive atmosphere of the house made it impossible to ignore the growing sense of dread. John, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, shook his head. "It's just the wind, honey," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even he couldn't deny the growing feeling that something was wrong. The whispers grew stronger, more insistent. Sometimes late at night when the house was asleep, Mary could have sworn she heard her name being called, a low, mournful sound that sent shivers down her spine. The house was alive, she realized, but not with the warmth of life. It was a cold, malevolent presence that sent a chill through her very core. Section 6. Shadows stirring. The shadows started to take on a life of their own, no longer simply the absence of light but shifting, writhing entities that lurked in the corners of their vision. They seemed to dance at the edge of their perception, gone as soon as they focused on them. Lily refused to be alone, her youthful fear giving way to a primal terror she couldn't explain. "Mom, there's something in the hallway," she whispered one night, her grip on Mary's arm so tight it hurt. Mary looked, but the hallway was empty. "There's nothing there, Lily," she said, but her voice wavered. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, hunted by something they couldn't see. John, ever the pragmatist, tried to rationalize the events. He talked about drafts, faulty wiring, even the power of suggestion. But deep down, even he couldn't deny the growing sense of unease, the chilling realization that they were not alone in the house. They were intruders in a place where something dark and ancient still resided. Section 7. A glimmer in the mirror. One evening as Lily was brushing her hair, she caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of her mirror. It was just a fleeting image, a flicker of movement behind her, but it was enough to send a jolt of terror through her. It was a face, pale and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to burn with a cold, ethereal light. She spun around, dropping her hairbrush in the process, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, yet the feeling of being watched lingered, heavy and oppressive. From that moment on, Lily avoided mirrors, afraid of what she might see reflected back at her. The encounters became more frequent, more brazen. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut with no explanation, and the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They were being tormented, toyed with by an unseen entity that seemed to draw pleasure from their fear. Section 8. Confronting the Unknown. John, desperate to regain control of the situation and his family's sanity, decided to confront the unknown. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, he descended into the basement, the source of the coldest, most unsettling presence in the house. The air grew heavy as he descended, the smell of damp earth and decay thick in his nostrils. The darkness was absolute, the beam of his flashlight barely penetrating the oppressive gloom. He could hear his own heart pounding in his ears, a frantic rhythm that mirrored the growing fear in his chest. "I know you're here," he called out, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness of the basement. "Show yourself!" The only response was the drip of water from a broken pipe, each drop like a hammer blow on his raw nerves. As he ventured deeper into the basement, the air grew colder and he felt a presence behind him. He spun around, his flashlight beam dancing across the darkness, but there was nothing there. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that something was moving just beyond the reach of his light. Section 9. Trapped. The basement door slammed shut with a resounding boom that echoed through the house. John whirled around, his heart pounding in his chest, to see the door handle rattling, as if someone was trying to get in. He threw his weight against the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen force was holding it shut, trapping him in the darkness. "Mary! Lily!" he shouted, his voice strained with panic, but his cries were swallowed by the thick stone walls of the basement. He was alone, trapped with whatever malevolent entity resided in the bowels of the house. The air grew colder, the darkness pressing in on him from all sides. He could hear the whispers all around him now, no longer faint murmurs but distinct voices, chanting his name, taunting him. His flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into absolute darkness. Terror, primal and consuming, took root in his mind. Section 10. The screams from within. Upstairs, Mary and Lily heard John's frantic cries for help. Terror gripped their hearts as they raced to the basement door, only to find it sealed shut. They threw their combined weight against it, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was holding John captive. "John! John!" Mary screamed, her voice hoarse with terror. But the only response was the sound of her own voice echoing back at her. The house was silent now, the whispers gone, replaced by an eerie stillness that was more terrifying than any sound. Then, they heard it, a low moan, followed by a blood-curdling scream. It was John's voice, filled with a terror so raw it sent shivers down their spines. The screams went on for what felt like an eternity, each one tearing at their hearts until finally they were silenced, replaced by a chilling silence that spoke volumes. Mary sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face as the horrifying truth sunk in. John was gone, consumed by the darkness that permeated the house. They were alone, at the mercy of a force they didn't understand and couldn't fight. Section 11, Forever Haunted. Mary and Lily fled the bungalow that night, leaving behind the horrors they had witnessed, and the memory of John's screams echoing in their ears. The bungalow on Blackwood Lane stood silent once more, its secrets locked away behind its darkened windows. The whispers remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that resided within. Some say the bungalow remains haunted to this day, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. They say that on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint echoes of John's screams, a chilling reminder of the evil that lurks within the walls of the bungalow on Blackwood Lane. The bungalow stood as a testament to the horrors it had witnessed, a place forever marked by the darkness that had consumed so many souls. It was a place to be avoided, a place where fear and despair lingered like a shroud. The bungalow on Blackwood Lane was a place where nightmares were born.